Autism Spectrum Disorder, which is a category identified by the IDA that is protected and given childhood services. So this is a little bit about autism spectrum disorder. This is a couple of definitions of what autism spectrum disorder is. The federal definition is that autism means a developmental disability significantly affecting verbal and nonverbal communication and social interaction, generally evident before age 3, that adversely affects a child's education performance. Other characteristics often associated with autism are engagement in repetitive activities and stereotype movements, resistance to environmental change or change in daily routines, and unusual responses to sensory experiences. The second point that they make about federal definition is that autism does not apply if a child's educational performance is adversely affected, primarily because the child has an emotional disturbance. And so this actually wouldn't fall under autism. And number 3, the third point that they want to make about this is a child who manifests the characteristics of autism after age 3 could be diagnosed as having autism if the criteria in paragraph 1 of this section are satisfied. So that's kind of a really inclusive definition about what autism actually is. It's definitely in the scope of education, but it's something that really affects kids' performances in education while they're in school, and can be identified if they're performing or exhibiting these behaviors. Another really important definition to keep in mind is that this is one that is used by the American Psychiatric Association and a lot of medical things, and a lot of in the medical world. And so this is also kind of a good one to keep in mind too, because a lot of the kids or a lot of the people that are going to be working with students with autism that we're going to be working with might be referring to this definition. So it eliminates narrow diagnostic labels and uses autism spectrum disorder to include PDT, pervasive developmental disorder, Asperger's, and other related conditions. This is the most significant criteria of ASD. If their condition affects their social interactions, their ability to communicate, if they're exhibiting repetitive behavior like self-stimulatory behaviors, and have fixated or restrictive interests. So that's something that the medical professionals that we'll be working with will keep in mind while we're working with students with autism. So kind of to make sense of these definitions, IDA's definition is most commonly used in public schools, so that's going to be the one that we're going to be looking to a lot more. So this little bit longer one that includes what it is and what it isn't. And then the DSM-V definition, the one right here, the one by the American Psychiatric Association, provides their perspective, and it's kind of the differentiation we can use for both of them. So let's talk a little bit about the characteristics of students with autism. So these are a couple of things that our textbook talked a little bit about. Firstly, their rote memory. So these are things that students with autism have really good ability to be able to think and remember what it was immediately said to them, and kind of looks like they might be comprehending because they're repeating things back to you. They just saw you do something, so they're just doing that exact same thing, but without really comprehending why they're doing it or what you're actually trying to get at for them to learn. So it looks like they're learning something, but it doesn't mean that they could do it on their own. So the next category that our textbook talks about for the cognitive and academic characteristics of students with autism is what it calls the theory of mind. And so this makes it really hard for students to actually put themselves in other people's shoes and understand what another person might be experiencing, because they're so focused on what their personal experience is. So that's called the theory of mind. This one was really interesting. So problem solving, they only have access to one form of problem solving. If that doesn't work in a different situation, then they're lost of what to do. They might be lost of what to do. So if they're working on an academic problem and the one thing that they're comfortable with isn't really accessible to them or doesn't work, they sometimes lose track of what's going on, or maybe can't really adapt to the new situation. Some of the social emotional characteristics are pretty evident too early on. One thing that our textbook talked about was the language disorders. They may struggle developing language skills and using them effectively to communicate. It's hard for them to learn what other people are experiencing, or what they need to be saying, or how to communicate what they're feeling effectively, or really how to engage other people in conversation. They might use unconventional language. They have a hard time maybe comprehending something that's not physically in front of them, or abstract concepts and ideas, and might use the wrong word because they've seen it used in a different context, back to that other situate or back to the academic characteristic where they have a difficulty like using problem solving, they're using different language to express their ideas, and it might be hard to understand. Our textbook had a couple great examples. And finally, immaturity, have a hard time understanding what other people are experiencing and how what they do might affect other people. Finally, behavior characteristics. These are things that are really, really obvious right away. So I think we can all think of somebody in our lives that we might have seen act in this way or behave in this way. Self-stimulatory behaviors like flapping hands, rubbing ears, jumping up and down. These little things that are maybe like I feel like tend to kind of signify if somebody has ASD. They're really common. They tend to stigmatize students away from more socially accepted behavior. So generalization issues is another behavior characteristics. It's difficult to flexibly use skills and information learned in one setting to another and apply them. For example, if they learned how to read and write, or they're working on like a writing assignment in one classroom, it would be really hard to use that same skill if they're having generalization issues in another classroom, even though they exhibited or parroted that information, that they understood what was going on. And finally, sensory issues like things like touching, hearing, feeling, seeing. These are things that could trigger or maybe even something that they are drawn to either way. But sensory issues is definitely a behavior characteristic. So there are a couple of things that that professionals have done to identify students with autism. The first really important thing is that there's a team that's involved in helping a student with autism get the care and skills and receive the education and support that they need. People on that team, parents, trusted guardians, psychologists and psychiatrists, people that are working to really evaluate and see what's going on with the student and examine their developmental history, as well as observe and assess current behaviors before diagnosis is reached. All these people are really, really important. Another person that can be invited on that team is their instructor, but I think that these people really play the key role on helping this student receive the care and things that they need. But mostly it's these people. Assessment. So there are a couple of things that that are done to identify students that have characteristics of autism. There's a lot of inclusion of standardized instruments, rating skills, people that are using different ways to assess student and what they're doing and where they're at. I liked the one, a developmental ability. A professional can work with parents and help their students see where they're at with like fine motor skills, language development, and how they're progressing and developing as a child. Behavior assessment. These are assessed by asking people and teachers. That's where the teacher really comes in. Asking parents, teachers, and others who interact with the student to complete a behavior checklist, kind of examining behaviors that the student is exhibiting and how and when these students are exhibiting those behaviors, and kind of determining relationships between those behaviors. What we as instructors really play the key role in is helping these students receive the care and support that they need. One instructional strategy is a visual support or schedule or task cards. So these might be like little schedules like placed throughout the room, but what they do is they help students understand the routines and what is expected of them and what will happen after each item and thing on the list. And so if a student can really see what's going on, kind of break down what's happening play by play, then it'll really help them be successful as they, try to examine what they need to do next. That's a way to relieve a lot of stress, and it's an instructional strategy that's really easy to do. This is one I've seen a lot in schools that I've worked in, is a home base or quiet corner. This is just a little area in the classroom that students can feel safe in. And if they're beginning to feel anxious or upset and need to calm themselves, then they can go to this quiet corner and kind of take a break from what's going on in the classroom. We could maybe put like the visual support of a task card or schedule there so they can maybe review what's going on. They can just maybe have a distracting activity or something like a sensory thing that's kind of a draw. Maybe not making it like too exciting or fun might be helpful, because I've also seen students that are going to this quiet corner too much because they just want to escape the regular just craziness of the classroom. But it's a great place to regain control, to settle down and kind of reset. So this is one I've seen super effective. It's an instructional strategy that can just be a support to a lot of different students that might struggle with just like the regular routines of class. So I just wanted to check out with you a few of these services. I really like this In Bloom autism services. I'm currently in Phoenix right now, and so I was looking at like their specific autism resources for students, actually specifically of multilingual descent or different cultures and backgrounds. And this one's offered in a bunch of different places and cities, and this is kind of what this looks like. It's like a physical learning center. They have a bunch of different locations just in Phoenix right here. And they also have ones, I think that they're offered in a bunch of different cities in America. So this is their Arizona clinical team, but a lot of different support for students of a bunch of different backgrounds and descents and a lot of different languages. So that's something I saw that was really good about In Bloom. This next one, Autism Speaks. This is specific to multilingual parents and families, but right here are all the languages that they have offered. You can just select right from the first homepage which language is most applicable to this family or this student. And then you can check out all the different informations, like they have definitions, symptoms, what causes autism, all those things that are listed under the IDA definition of autism. Help information, resource guide, autism response team. There's a whole team that's working with these students to help them get involved. And I think it's really cool that there's an invitation for parents and students of multilingual background to get involved in helping their students figure out and get the support that they need to be successful in schools. And so that's a little bit about the resources that I found that would help families of multilingual heritage and descent really be successful here. But I learned so much in this process of looking up this category of IDA and thinking about students with ASD and how I could better support them as an educator and as a future teacher of students.